Hello there, Toffies. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Ryan and Sean, per usual, following the 246th Merseyside Derby, finishing Liverpool 1, Everton 0. Just their second league defeat for the Toffees under David Moyes. This one came at the hands of Diogo Jota's controversial goal midway through the second half. We'll, of course, break down the match as we always do on this show. Before we do that, just a plug, we did a couple episodes over the lengthy international break. We did a deep dive on Angus Kinnear, his background at Leeds, and some interviews that he did that we felt would be potentially illuminating for what he might bring as CEO of Everton. And then we also did a breakdown of Newcastle United after their recent Carabao Cup victory, talking about how they built their squad over the years, and again, thinking about ways that Everton might strategically look to improve in the coming windows and coming years. So go check those episodes out for sure. Hope that you enjoy them. If you do, reach out, give us feedback. We're very eager to get feedback from listeners about your thoughts on those types of episodes. So let us know, reach out, follow us on socials, leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. All of the links are in the description. And with that, we go to our summary quote. It's Sean's turn to pick. I'll hand it off to him.
Thanks, James. And yeah, quite a match to have this, illustrious honor. And so I'm going to just use XG Everton Fury, of course, OG of the Discord, and it's pretty simple. I was tired of us not losing under Moyes. As you mentioned, of course, our second league defeat under Moyes. The international break feels like it's lasted 2.5 months. So, for us, I'm glad that we're playing again. Of course, unfortunate with what happened today. Score predictions, none correct. Some optimism as well as some heavy pessimism. So unfortunately, no one got it correct. And with that, James, I'll hand it to you for lineups.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I would say that we were getting a little too close to actually not knowing the meaning of losing. And I think that's more of a metaphor in the song and not necessarily meant to be taken literally. So glad to crash back to earth in customary Everton fashion. As far as the lineup for the day, Moyes, no changes actually, despite the few weeks off from the team that drew with West Ham before the international break. That said, we were very happy to see, I think all of us and Evertonians worldwide, happy to see Ilman Ndiaye return to the bench. He, of course, would later make a substitute appearance. And then Mykolenko, interesting that he ends up making the starting 11. I think this one came down to the wire for the most part. He was battling what actually looked like a pretty bad hamstring injury during international duty with Ukraine. So fortunate that he was able to come back just in time to pocket Mo Salah. And then Jesper Lindstrom, a late scratch with a groin strain. Hopefully that's nothing too serious and we can have him back before too long because he is... Jack Harrison played at West Ham. He plays again today, this time on the right. We see Charlie off the left, Decore back in that sort of number 10 second striker role, and the rest of the team remains unchanged. As for Liverpool, walk us through what Arne Slot went with on the day.
Yeah, so no Trent Alexander-Arnold still, and of course Alisson got a concussion, and he's kind of on the way back, so expect him probably next match. This one was too soon. Curtis Jones at right back instead of Kwanzaa. Hope he took his, antidepressant meds to just kind of quell the anger, that he had from the Goodison Derby. And so, of course, for us, it's like playing behind their fullbacks, right? You look at that back line on paper, it looks a lot better than it is in terms of name versus game. So you see that both Jones and Robertson were going to be pushed up higher. Of course, Gravenberch with McAllister, very steady player. He was a bit deeper on the ball a lot. And, of course, Dominic Szoboszlai up higher in the right half space. And then you had really kind of the threat of Luis Diaz and Mo Salah. Really unfortunate that Liverpool didn't start Darwin Núñez. Of course, Diogo Jota. Much better player and somebody that unfortunately does a pretty good job in the minutes that he does get when he is healthy. So, yeah, in terms of going to the match, let's go to key matchups.
Yeah, Jota's important for them, too, just because he's so much less predictable. His movement's a lot better. With Núñez, you kind of know what he's going to do. So I think they're definitely a better team with him out there. Diving and flopping around the side. But yeah, I think the key matchups really on paper, what you looked at first was Luis Diaz versus Jake O'Brien on that side. And, it's interesting. They were definitely trying to funnel it to Diaz a lot. Virgil van Dijk and Robertson combined with 37 passes into the final third on that side. Van Dijk, it was 13 to 16 on long balls, so there was definitely a conscientious effort to get it out there. And Diaz had 8 touches in the box. He created 6 chances. Robertson created 2. No one else on the pitch had more than 1. That being said, I mean, it didn't feel like Diaz was completely dominant. I mean, he definitely gave them an orientation, and he didn't get shut down necessarily. But Jake, I think, kept it at bay somewhat. I mean, the XA was only 0.24. I think the more dangerous aspect was Jota sneaking over on that side. I mean, he also had 8 touches in the box, 5 shots on target. The only one that was on target was his goal. So, I mean, it certainly was their most dangerous strategy and approach, but I think it was more kind of Jota. I think Jake did okay. Mykolenko's Salah battle is always interesting, though, right?
Yeah, Mykolenko, no matter what state he's in fitness-wise, or what, he always seems to just emerge, and honestly, he typically does pretty well against some of the most elite wingers in the Premier League, but particularly Mo Salah. A lot of people were saying Mykolenko was man of the match. Spoiler alert, I did choose him down below once we get through the timeline. But yeah, to do such a good job, Salah finished with 8 touches in the box, but his only shot on target was the header that he had early on. Mykolenko 4 for 4 in tackles, 8 clearances, and was only dribbled past once. Salah, on the other hand, 0 for 5 in dribbles. He just had that 1 shot on target. I don't know if you would even call that a big chance. I mean, Pickford was kind of right there. 0 for 3 in crosses and an expected assist of 0.1. I mean, that's a remarkable job for Mykolenko, I have to say, for a guy who's had such an incredible year, and everyone waxes lyrical about what an amazing year he had and what a career at Liverpool and blah, 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 but he never seems to play well thanks to Mykolenko when we play them in derbies.
No, and look, he's getting in the box a ton this year. He's up there, and he's in essence playing as a second striker in many ways too, and he's put a ton of goal contributions in and just didn't today. So yeah, Mykolenko deserves a lot of credit. Miko kept him banged up too. I mean, at one point his ankle hurt from blocking a shot. He was rolling around. I mean, but he still hung in there. And I mean, his health was in doubt even leading into the week. You know, it was only a couple days ago where Moyes said they thought he was going to be healthy enough to play the match. Heaven knows how it would have fared with Ashley Young out there against Mo Salah. So, you know, it is what it is.
But thank God we never have to learn.
Yeah, exactly. Although he did have a nice little cross later in the match. Anyway, moving into the timeline in the match. Look, there were some key moments in this match. I can't say it was wildly entertaining. The first half certainly more competitive than the second, but there were a couple big moments that are definitely worth discussion, and I think the first one is in the 11th minute where Tarkowski comes in with a very, very hard tackle on Szoboszlai. It was an immediate yellow, on McAllister's immediate yellow, and a lot of debate afterwards on whether or not it was a red. And again, you know, badge check's always a factor on this one as well. I'm curious everyone's take on this one.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it live, if he doesn't get the ball, to me, it's a clear red, but he gets the ball, right? And it's just also, too, one of those things, like, why is McAllister, like, going into that? Like, I think for me, that was, like, the big point. It's just, like, you know, I understand he's Argentinian and he loves, like, you know, the contact and the flair, but, like, you know what you're doing, and I think that's, fortunately, for once in our lives, like, VAR saw the same thing of, like, you know, it's not a situation where he was also planted, but also I think what it comes down to fundamentally is he got the ball first, and so, yeah, I think a yellow was deserved because it was hard contact.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that point, Sean. I think McAllister is under some obligation once you realize that you've got no prayer at winning the ball to get yourself out of danger. They talked a lot on the broadcast about Tarkowski knows what he's doing there and he's clearly endangering an opponent. Well, yes, both players have a right to play the ball, but when one wins it so cleanly, I don't know how you can be so punitive in a derby, no less, when everything is super tense and the game's all level. Tarkowski goes in for that. There's no way he can pull out of that in time. He goes in with such force. It would have been a really harsh red. I think if that had gone against us, I would have probably been screaming it's an obvious red card. But at some point, you have to say, when the player has a right to play and win the ball, that is, you can't just judge everything that comes after that separately. It takes away from the game too much.
It's tough for me. I mean, I've made that tackle a lot, so I know it. And he knows what he's doing in that one, too. He's like, I'm going to go in super hard here, and I'm going to go in with full force, and I'm going to win the ball. I know I'm going to win the ball first, and I'm going to go through, because the thing is, if you pull up at all on that, you might not win it. And you typically have a chance of getting hurt. So you've got to go in with some level of authority. Yeah, I'm with you, Sean. I have no idea what McAllister's thinking here, too. I mean, it's debatable because he comes in with such ferocity. I mean, that's really, is that excessive force? I mean, it's just hard to say excessive force doing what? Going into the ball? And so I don't know how you can expect him to fully pull up. I think this is consistently shown a yellow. I can't believe how many people have come out afterwards crying that it was a red. Where were you when Van Dijk had done the same thing to Everton, stepping over the ball? Where were you against Napoli when cleaned out, was it Insigne? Just absolutely wiped him out. An incredibly dirty play where he barely got the ball on it and clipped him. So I think there's a little bit of a double standard here. He does get the ball cleanly, though. And, he doesn't even make that nasty a contact with the legs. He kind of gets caught in between them. He doesn't follow through with the force necessarily any more than the force coming into the ball. It's not like he lunged out and karate kicked. I don't know. It's borderline, I guess, for me, but I'm pretty happy they called it a yellow because his intent is still playing the ball, even if he knows he's going in hard. And I just don't know what McAllister's thinking in many ways. Like, no one stays in here and takes this. Like, what's happening, and you was super late going into it.
I also know there's typically a lot of talk about really you shouldn't call fouls and give cards based on the point at which it is in the game. But I also think there's something to be said for it is the first 10 minutes of a derby and you're going to give a red card to one team. You're basically ending the fixture. We know we've had that early type of red card happen in derbies in recent history, Ashley Young being the example. But to me, it's just give him a yellow. You've got to have the referee exert some control over the game, but it's going to be physical. You have to let them play in a game like this.
Well, the only counter I would say to that is, to me, the one argument for the red was Tark looked frustrated and angry. I mean, they didn't call a foul right before that, by the way, where Garner, I thought, got fouled. And I don't know why they didn't call that. Jota turned Tark before that on about the top of the 18, which is a foul in my opinion, too. And so I think he was a bit fired up and going in there hard to make a point. It's a derby, and he's trying to do that. So I suppose from one angle, maybe you could make a case. But I'm with you, James. I mean, look, he gets the ball so cleanly. And I have to admit, this isn't even a card, let alone a foul, like when I was growing up playing. Granted, I'm dating myself here, but, it's true. It's true. So, I don't know. What did Moyes afterwards say? Great tackle. I love it.
Classic Moyes. That's very on brand for him. And then that chance, they get a free kick and Szoboszlai hits it over. But then 9 or so minutes later, this is the Beto getting in behind for the first time with a really nice long ball from Tarkowski over the top. He finishes. He does an unbelievable job to shield the defender and finish the goal, but gets ruled out. The flag goes up on the play, and then it's reviewed. Your thoughts on this one, guys? Initially, on the first replay I saw, I thought he was off, but then the more I see it, combined with the fact that we never actually saw the lines drawn that they used to make the decision, I've got questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think in those cases, unfortunately, tie goes to the badge check, right? And Liverpool, in this case, it seems like got the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, to your point, James, first off, the ref did one thing right today, if anything, and that's let play go on, right? So I was appreciative of that. But of course, those moments get soured when you have situations like this where the line is so tight. But similar to kind of the play that we'll get to later today in regards to just like zero kind of transparency or discussion regarding it, and just we kind of move on. Yeah, it's just really unfortunate that because it looks like truly, as close as you possibly can get to him being onside.
We still haven't seen the line. So to quote assistant to the regional optimist, your brother in arms, Sean, on the Discord, the line is, I'm still waiting to see the offside line for Beto's goal. And, Football Offsides at Foot Offsides out there on Twitter posted this as well, saying he was offside to the build-up. However, VAR chose the wrong player to draw the line. And, obviously they're trying to simulate the calibration that was done using their own angles. And, I'm not saying this is super scientific, but man, it is really close. And I just don't understand, why didn't we see the proper line? Because Van Dijk is off the ball. I mean, he's the one that you draw the line on. I mean, it's really close to me. Either way, it's a fantastic finish by Beto and a great play. Beto was a handful the whole time. It's just sad. It's like, God, you look at this and you think,
Not to mention, this is the last time we'll ever be able to have this type of line drawing debate because the Premier League bizarrely chose to introduce semi-automated offsides at the weekend.
Utterly ridiculous.
So, I mean, it's a welcome change, but bizarre timing to introduce it in the last third, less than a third of the season to go. It's very strange.
The people that run this league, I swear they are not serious human beings half the time. I just seriously, that's so absurd on so many levels. I don't even understand that. Like, we could talk about implementation all day and how VAR has been done elsewhere. File this, by the way, in whenever we finally do a series on how we would make the sport better. But yeah, this is the garbage that's not catering to the fans. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous.
Well, Ryan, they need new content, right? I mean, instead of talking about how Chelsea is going to threaten Arsenal for second, why not talk about how semi-automated offsides will be, for a week, right? So.
Yeah, well, I mean, so they'll complain about that somehow too, or they'll do some other trade-off about not going to the screen or something. I mean, have we forgotten that? They seriously had a screen on the side of the pitch that they never went at. How crazy is that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. At this point, though, we grew into the game a little bit, and it was a little bit of an exchange in chances. And yes, we were sitting deeper, and we were pretty sloppy, but at least there was some opportunity on the counter, and we were getting in behind their fullbacks a little bit. And then soon after, there's this massive chance from Beto. And I think this is probably the play of the match in many ways. Van Dijk looks awful on this play. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, Beto was clearly getting in their head. There was a lot of physical play that they let go. He was bullying these guys pretty well. This is about as close as you can come to scoring.
Yeah, it's a ridiculous chance. Again, Beto does all the hard work to create this opportunity, the touch to take it kind of under Van Dijk, who, as you said, Ryan, doesn't even know what planet he's on this play. He's completely out of it. I don't think he knows where the ball is. His positioning is all off. Beto takes it clean in, one-on-one with the keeper, and elects to shoot right as he gets to the 18, and it's square off the post, back out. And at this moment is when I didn't lose hope, but I thought, if we can't finish that one, we're not going to get a better chance than this today.
Notice he hit it to his left this time, instead of opening up his body and sending it down the other side. And I've seen him score on this as well, too, in the past. It hits the inside of the post, for heaven's sakes. It's just such a shame, too, because he was such a handful. He was so isolated, especially in the first half, and he's creating a lot of this stuff by himself. He was not getting a lot of good outlet passes, too. I mean, you could tell those center backs wanted nothing to do with him, and you just felt like he deserved this goal, but he didn't.
Yeah, just frustrating for Beto because, of course, as we talked about, right? I mean, he was on that insane scoring spree, and unfortunately, the well has dried up a little bit. But it's no lack of I think taking his chance, and I think he's to your point, Ryan. There's not much different he could do right outside of scoring. So I think he does everything well, of course, besides finish, and even his shot just unlucky to hit the kind of wrong side of the post.
Yeah, and then after this, it was kind of back and forth. There was some scrambling around in that crazy, off the counter in the 42nd and the cross and flopping around all over the place. Some of it was maybe their finishing wasn't phenomenal, but I don't know. Part of the issue here is Tarkowski picking up the early yellow. You could tell he was a little more tentative. There were times where you were expecting him to run in and just wipe someone out, and that didn't really happen. And look, let's be honest. You could tell it's in the players' heads that they're playing against Liverpool and they know Liverpool's going to get all the officiating. It's true. And that's why I think you saw a little less aggressive play, maybe. There's that strange deflection in the 44th where Gravenberch kind of took it off that layoff from Curtis Jones. It looked like it deflected off Decore first and then Tark. Thankfully went right into Pickford's hands because we've seen that happen, right?
That was very scary, and somehow we get lucky in that moment. But there was also a couple other chances for Liverpool, but just a couple minutes after that Gravenberch chance, Beto continuing to make really good runs. It's another one here. He lays it off to Charlie. Charlie rips the shot. Beto kind of can't keep his momentum going forward, so he gets it in behind, but then Van Dijk catches up to him, I think, and kind of squares up, and he has to lay it off to Charlie, who rips a shot. Not afraid to take a shot from distance, that Alcaraz, which I greatly appreciate, more so than even when Ghana takes them. But it's deflected behind for a corner. And other than that, those were really the major exciting moments of the first half.
Well, to me, this was the big one, was off the corner, right? I mean, eventually, or the extended play off it where Charlie had the header. You know what I mean? Like that was the one where I thought, that was a pretty big chance that I was surprised he didn't do a little better with. Is he going to score there? I don't know. But that led us into halftime. And I think going into halftime, we probably thought that, well, that was a little better than maybe we could have anticipated. I was a little fearful what Liverpool might dial up. But there were some interesting numbers, and there were definitely some good performances by Everton in the first half. But as dominant as Liverpool were with possession, and their passing was phenomenal. I mean, 19 accurate long balls, 79% on long balls in the first half for Liverpool. Pretty phenomenal. They really only had, 15 touches in the box versus Everton had 11. They really didn't, you were expecting them to get the ball wide and dribble and beat us off the dribble, but they only had 4 successful dribbles at 36% rate, and Everton were 2 for 5 in dribbles. So the counter looked a little bit dangerous. It's too bad we were sloppy, actually. I think we could have maybe generated a few better chances. But, man, some of these individual duel numbers are really impressive. And Idrissa Gana guy, again, my heavens.
We just need to dedicate a segment to Ghana's performance every single episode. We pretty much do it anyway, but yeah, 5 for 5 in duels won in the first half, 3 for 3 on the ground, 2 for 2 in the air. Doucouré as well, 5 for 7, which is pretty solid, all on the ground.
Well, sloppy as he was, James, he was still making things happen. And again, a little bit's an element of chaos, but just we don't have anyone else to kind of transition. And he can't carry the ball the way he used to, but he can carry it still a little bit. And with Njai not playing, yes, he was on the bench. That was a nice thing. But, you didn't really have that guy. It was him and Charlie, really.
Yeah, well, I think you saw Everton being generally pretty passive out of possession, but then picking their moments to kind of jump the lanes and making some good interceptions and trying to spring the counter to limited effect. There was that one moment that Doucouré had where he gets it right outside the 18 and he makes a move and he beats the guy and then he mistouches it and almost loses possession. He recovers it again and he's almost in on goal and then he loses it. And that just sums up Doucouré as a player for me, just looking clumsy the entire way, but very close to making things happen. Unfortunately, not at that moment and really not for the remainder of the game. But as we have kind of summarized, better than I expected in the first half. Going away really took the crowd out of it for large stretches, which I think is a big factor, even when allegedly Sky was pumping up the "You'll Never Walk Alone" like artificial noise on the broadcast.
That was so weird, right?
Just everyone just all the broadcasters fake crying about how beautiful a song it is and all that. Like it just makes me so sick every single time.
And the thing is, like, if you look at some of the other individual numbers, Mo Salah's numbers weren't good. You know what I mean? He was 1 for 8 in duels. And I think the key was you saw a couple matchups for Everton and Beto. Konate was not dealing with Beto very well. And neither was Van Dijk. And so you had some hope going into the second half, but I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Fundamentally, I don't think the second half was just very, very good performance by Everton at all.
Yeah, I think to your point, Ryan, it's, for an Anfield derby, right, where we don't really play well there, I think for the first time in a while, outside of course, the COVID win, you feel pretty good going into the second half, especially with the potential of somebody like Iliman Ndiaye coming out of the pitch, right? But it's just for whatever reason, it's just we kind of just, turned it down a few levels and just kind of let the game, be dictated once again by Liverpool and, just a matter of time before they unfortunately score.
I think they just showed a little better control, Liverpool did. You know what I mean? And they really had us pinned back a little bit deeper. You can go through a couple of these things. I don't think the subs really worked maybe the way we wanted them to. The game got a little choppy and slowed the game down. But first, the most important element in the match was in the 56th minute. Liverpool finally break through in a little bit controversial fashion is what you said up front, James. But I'm kind of curious everyone's take on this one.
I watched it live and I thought, obviously he's offside because why would Tark, if he's not there, Tark's going to play that completely differently. He might just let it through and let Pickford play. But then I went back and I was curious at the time because I couldn't remember the exact wording of the rule. And I read the rule. And what the rule essentially says, I won't read it verbatim, but the person has to at least attempt to involve themselves in the play or challenge an opponent, prevent the opponent from being able to play the ball, obstructing their line of vision, things like that. And then the last one, making an obvious action which clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. And I watched this replay half a dozen times, maybe more. And Diaz just stands there from the second Gravenberch plays it into him. He does not make a move toward the ball. He just stands stationary, pretty much directly straight up, not even in like a position like you would be in to try to receive it. All that to say, I ultimately think it's probably the right call that he makes upon review and live on the field. I don't think he's offside because just because you're standing there and Tarkowski might think that you might make a play for the ball doesn't itself make you offside.
So you're suggesting that Tarkowski's got to either let the ball go or do something different, because Tarkowski clearly made an attempt at the ball with concern for the player. You know what I mean? Like, I think otherwise he either lets it go to pick or takes an extra touch or whatnot.
Yeah, that'd be what I'd say is Tark should just launch it. He tries to clear it. It goes directly to Liverpool, comes right back to Diaz, and he puts it to Jota, who then also the defending after the fact is pretty poor. It's a good move from Jota. He beats Ghana, and then he takes Tark kind of out of the play. Branthwaite's backing off. There's a lot that has to happen beyond that potential offsides for them to ultimately score. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I think live, to your point, James, I had the same exact thought, and I think it's just the application of the rule at this point, right? And yeah, to your point, it's a frustrating one because, like, it almost just feels like kind of big club bias, but I think if you peel back the onion a little bit, and to your point, look at the rule book, you might feel a bit differently, similar to kind of where your analysis came to. And yeah, I'm kind of in alignment with you.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I mean, so here's my only problem with this. So, I mean, yeah, you can dissect the rule, but then is the insinuation that you have to be doing something kind of intentional rather than standing there? Because here's my problem. Like, what do you think he's doing there? Like, I mean, and you could argue, well, he's allowed to be in an offside position as long as it's not affecting the play. And I mean, I'm looking at this. So I mean, obviously he doesn't touch the ball. No, eventually he touches the ball. So did that not count as part of the extended sequence? Because he doesn't get a chance to get the ball if that doesn't happen. Does he really have to challenge for the ball? And it's clearly attempting to make a play, which is close when this action impacts on an opponent. But so is it that if you just make it look like you're not really involved in the play, even if you're clearly standing in an area where you could play the ball, then it's okay? Like, that's a pretty cool idea. I like that. So I think what we should do is put a center forward right offside all the time, but have him look disinterested, maybe looking into the clouds or, kind of like 5-year-olds do when they play football. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, this is another
extra effect.
Well, what I have a problem with is this is the type of garbage where they write the rules in a way like, what on earth does that mean? And I really think it's partially because there's kind of these underpinning ideas on how football is supposed to be played, and they want to stay true to the spirit, yes, I said it, in a different way, to the game. And like the handball rule, how it's really about intentionality. It always has been underpinning. And they would never, ever do something which just made it objective, because when they did, everyone had a cow because it was not the intent of the rules. But I do think there's a happy medium here where you can make it a lot easier for the officials, because think about what you're asking an official to do. Making an obvious action with clearly impacts on the ability of an opponent to play the ball. An obvious action? What is a non-obvious action? Like, I don't know, man. To me, it did impact the play. So we're blaming Tarkowski now. I mean, really, in many ways. Maybe that's fair.
I think that's what it comes down to as the rule's written. I feel like we talk about this with handballs as well, where you're trying to ascribe intent, and it's like a court case you would need to litigate to determine, well, what was his state of mind at the exact moment the ball was played to him? Was he thinking about being involved? Like, do we need to take this to arbitration every time there's an offside call or a handball? I think they're trying... you said it already, Ryan. They're trying to make it clear and make it so that if you watch it on a replay, to me, again, if you watch it, he's standing flat-footed. He doesn't really move from having his feet planted. If he does, I think they call him offside. He doesn't. So even though he's psychologically psyching Tark out, I don't think he actually does anything that would, by the rule, make him offside.
And I think they were so shocked that he was just standing there because he was flopping the entire game. So just, it's just, yeah.
Well, so I think when we get to the end and do our summary, let's explore to hear what the Everton guys think about it. But before we do that, I think it's worth noting that, look, they scored. It's early enough. There's some things Everton could have done about this one. You know, this Liverpool team is not known for having the greatest defense known to man. And I don't think their fullbacks are particularly good. Jones is not a natural fullback. So, and Beto is clearly creating problems for the two center backs. So I think what's worth exploring a little bit more is the lack of kind of response here. Look, Liverpool's going to do what they do. Like, Jota gets his yellow in the 63rd with just an absolutely spastic, immature reaction to the line. I'm happy he got yellowed for that. But let's look at some of the changes. So Jack Harrison goes off in the 68th minute for Njai. Now, I was a little concerned about this one because, I mean, this match is not, next year is more important, and we need the Illman skill man to be fully ready to go after the summer. So I was a little nervous about this one, but Jack wasn't great. We'll get to that at the end. I don't know. I mean, this has the potential of being an impact sub, but, I mean, can you really expect much from Njai at this point?
No, I mean, I think to your point, Ryan, it's like at this point, I'm just curious if he got his knee brace from CVS or Walgreens. But other than that, in terms of him being healthy, is the biggest that to me is the biggest priority, right? And the idea that I know Moyes, in terms of his pressers, and it's just like, yeah, he's close, right? It's just so hard to read with, some of the things that he said and what's actually been true. But yeah, I mean, if you talk about an impact, and especially with how Jack played today, it was a clear upgrade.
Yeah, I think it was disappointing, though. Even after this, I felt like Liverpool were the more of the threat to score. There was kind of a decent chance in the 72nd with Robertson with the cross, just misses Jota here. And, at this point, like, if you're going to pack it in against them, they don't really have that number 9 that's necessarily going to overpower anyone. So I guess you're still afraid they may run in behind a little bit. But look, Moyes has clearly seen enough here in the 77th. He makes the triple sub. Now, first questions first. I mean, this is a little bit late, maybe. Would we like to see a sub earlier? And then kind of what are your thoughts on some of the subs in particular? I think Charlie coming off and keeping Decore on, I think, was maybe a little bit strange, but maybe there's something to that we don't know about.
Yeah, I think the only kind of thing to me that was like curious is I don't understand why Chermiti wasn't like one of the first subs on, because I just feel like in his time back, especially, I mean, you look at the West Ham match, right? He was absolutely electric. It seems like he's kind of, building his fitness up. I think I would have had him if you wanted to talk about target strikers rather than Broha, right? Just because I feel like he could play that role, and he's a lot more dynamic than Broha is. So that would really be kind of the only thing different, as well as Charlie off. I just feel like that, in terms of just an overall threat, because at the end of the day, it's just we need the best attackers that we have on the pitch, right? And I just feel like those two are probably the only disagreements I have, per se, with Moyes changes.
I mean, Broha's not a target player. I just felt like we were then orienting everything up to him. It's not his game.
It's not only just the nature of the subs or the fact that he made the subs he did. It was there didn't really seem to be super clear ideas in how to change the style of play once the subs were on. I mean, the 5 minutes, it's the 77th minute, and the 5 minutes after we make that triple sub, we're pinned back inside our own 18 for the most part, and really not looking to pressure Liverpool in possession, to push up higher, to try to intercept the ball and spring a counterattack, things that you would hope that a team trailing in the game would be looking to do.
And you could tell they were confused. I mean, Tim didn't know whether he was supposed to step up and man mark the third midfielder, or Njai drops back and take him. I mean, there was a lot of confusion there, which making subs is when you're supposed to be organized, change the tactics, and bring everyone in.
I don't know if you guys saw this. There was that little the flip book that they had, I assume it's a tactics book or something that Tim was holding on the sideline, and he showed, I think, to Broja before they came on. Would love to know what was in that book, because I'm sure it didn't say get pinned inside your final third and don't attack.
Well, they were disorganized, and that's what I don't understand. Like, I don't think there's a lot of excuse for that. I don't think that's good, and maybe he just felt like Njai was going to make more of a difference, and they weren't doing what he wanted, and he kind of rushed the subs. But the 77th minute, I don't think you need to rush it. But I thought it was very interesting that it was so bad that eventually he did move for Chermiti several minutes later to play as more of a target, and didn't do very well in that. either. I just think we lost a lot when Beto came off, and I don't know if Beto was worn out at that point. I mean, sometimes he looks like he is. I have no problem with Garner coming off. He looked like he was a little bit wiped. He was aggressive today, but not very composed on the ball. His distribution wasn't good. I know I say that Tim Irabunum's not the greatest player in the world, but this is the type of situation you'd want him in. He'll get on the ball, sometimes out of his own ignorance, and he'll pressure, and he's a good athlete. But yeah, I was disappointed with the disorganization because I feel like Moyes has had pretty strong identities and game plans so far in his tenure, and this was not the case.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It just felt like, Tim, we know, he gets the ball and he's going to immediately look to dribble. And it just felt like the players didn't really have an idea, as you said, disorganized, no way to like gel together to put together a cohesive move forward. Like they're all disjointed, they're all over the place, and there was nothing really positive in the attacking direction.
So soon after Trimidi comes on, was anyone shocked at all that Darwin Núñez was going to find a way to impact the match in some sort of annoying fashion?
Not at all.
Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it is like clockwork. This guy, like I think the greatest comparison in terms is he's like the Russell Westbrook of the NBA with just how like infuriating he is. Because he in the 85th minute he is just being a complete sissy. I'll use that word.
Whoa. Hold on one second. By the way, that's a shot at Russell Westbrook, who's a good basketball player at least. Núñez has been, a massive disappointment for them. So come on, man. Cut him a little bit of a break.
No, it's the theatrics, Ryan. And I think for any NBA fans that saw what he did yesterday, I think they would appreciate it. But in terms of, he goes into Pickford after the whistle was blown up, rolls on the pitch like he was rolling in the stands in the Uruguay game where he just started fighting people. And it's just like, it's just nonsense, man. Like, it's just like, and the idea that like Liverpool fans are shocked that he got a yellow. At the end of the day, he's like also just wasting time, right? So it's just like, to me, it's like this guy is now known, for being more of a disruption than an actual striker, which is just comical at this point.
Pick kicks him, but the bottom line, he's playing around with the ball going to goal like 30 seconds after the whistle has clearly blown. And it's not because of the electric Anfield atmosphere that he didn't hear it. He was being annoying. And then to lay down out of bounds, which, why is the referee stopping the match at this point? He's out of bounds. Play. Then he rolls back on the pitch. Of course, he gets a yellow for that. The worst is the announcer saying they showed the collision between him and Pickford, and they just couldn't believe that Núñez got a yellow for that. I'm like, that wasn't it, you guys. Now, heaven's sakes, are you not watching the match? He rolled back onto the pitch. The guy's an embarrassment. But I don't know what they do with him, by the way. Who is going to spend a lot of money on this guy? How much do they pay for him?
What do they pay? 60, 70? Like a boatload? I just love
more than that.
The theatrics of it, because he's down, he's out of bounds, and Tark is like gesturing to the referee and saying, he's out of bounds. And then as he says that, Núñez just sort of like does a little bit double barrel.
It's like, really? Roll. Yeah. 85 million euros, by the way.
The best part about 40? That, though,
50?
The best part about that, though, is he misses the shot. Like, it's just like, let's just completely ignore that, too.
Are you surprised?
Like, it just completely, goes, to the left of the post. Like, it's just, the whole sequence is just, it did provide some humor, so.
I guess what I find kind of interesting, too, is that there were some moments here in the end that we really didn't generate a great chance. There were a couple moments, though, I would say. I found it pretty ridiculous where they flagged Broja for offside. That was a really close play, probably was on. They're supposed to keep the flag down. Like, what are you watching? That was really, really close. So I thought we got to the point where we know to keep it down, at least when it's remotely close. How do you screw this one up that badly? Like, you've got one job, man. You're standing on the line. He was in good position to see it.
I don't understand. It's so inconsistent. And even within this single match, it's inconsistent. Sometimes he puts it up. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he lets it go on. I don't know if that's written in the rules. I guess if it's clear, they say if it's clear, which we know from clear and obvious that it rarely ever meets that criteria. I just think you got to let him play on and see how the play finishes up. Do have to maybe, unfortunately, tip my cap to Curtis Jones for the clearance in the 92nd minute, because I don't know how he touches it directly back over his shoulder when it's coming out of the air like that. But Branthwaite was right there, and he was shocked that didn't fall to him.
Well, I think then they called him off.
Classic,
which
of course.
he never touches the ball.
Yeah.
How is he like? I don't understand. It's completely inconsistent. But really, I think fundamentally Everton can only kind of look at themselves for the effort they put on after the goal. I mean, these second half numbers are not good. It wasn't good. I mean, Everton had only one shot, none on target, and look, Liverpool got into the box and were a threat. I mean, they had 18 touches in the box. Everton only had 6. So that stat from before that we thought, okay, yeah, they had the ball a lot, but we got in the box plenty. Didn't happen in the second half. I mean, Everton 57% passing in the second half versus 69%, while Liverpool had the lead. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. I mean, Everton didn't have a single shot or even a dribble after the Liverpool goal. I mean, Liverpool had more interceptions than Everton in the second half, guys. And the dribbling, remember the dribbling stat? Liverpool was 6 for 7 in dribbles in the second half. Diaz were 3 for 3, and Everton collectively is 1 for 5. And to me, that's the difference. Could not get the counter going. Could not get the ball up the pitch at all. Maybe had something to do with the subs, but it just wasn't there. And ground duels, Liverpool 57% in ground duels versus Everton's 43%. I don't know if the team was worn out, hadn't played in 2.5 weeks. I don't know. Maybe Liverpool were better tactically than I thought, but we were just completely toothless in the second half.
I mean, is it unfair to say that? I know everyone's saying, Liverpool, their least impressive champions that they can ever remember, but this is the almost certain champions at home in a fixture that we basically never win when there's fans in the stadium. And their squad is light years ahead of ours quality-wise, and they showed it today. They didn't really have to play that well. And all that said, it still took a really impressive individual moment from Jota and maybe a questionable lack of an offside call for them to get the winner. Am I just trying to make lemonade out of lemons here, or do we think that's fair?
No, I think so. I would say 2 things, right? The first thing is I think Everton became, I think, somewhat self-aware that in terms of the quality, it just was not there today, right? From the key attacking players in regards to, I mean, you saw it, just passes kind of going awry and whatnot. So I think after the goal was scored, I think their biggest kind of fear was then it going to 2-0, right? In terms of getting turned over. And I think that's where the lack of aggression came, where it became too much of a lack of aggression, right? At a certain point, you can't just rely on a Tarkowski moment, right, to kind of, happen again, right? It's not lightning in a bottle. And I think for us, that's what essentially happened today. And, to your point, James, it's just like, I think they almost gave them too much respect after a certain point. Even the attacking players that came on, they didn't chase the game, right? And at that point, it's just like, even if you lose 2-0, right, at this point, it doesn't really matter. And so I think that was more the disappointing thing than anything.
But the attacking players are Timur Bunum, Ashley Young, Broja, and Chermiti. I mean, half those guys, two of those 4 are not even attacking players. One's
That's a fair point.
Left back.
I forgot about the Young sub who had the great cross that Curtis Jones made a play on. And I mean, this may be a little bit kind of like when they do the Super Bowl 2 weeks after the playoffs, the last game, and everyone's rusty and the Super Bowl's kind of sloppy. I mean, it was a long break for Everton. So, I mean, I get a little bit some of that, but.
And Moyes never wins at Anfield. I don't know if that plays into it at all, but
I don't know. These are one of those matches where you watch the game and you're just like, dear heavens, can we please get 4 or 5 impact players this summer? I mean, that is exactly where my mind went to. And maybe I can't help it, but I just felt like that. I mean, just the numbers I just keep looking at. Only 6 accurate long balls in the second half by Everton. It's just not pretty. And look, they deserve to win. And I think Moyes even said so at the end of the match as well. But first, Kieran Jennings says a lot of good stuff out there on Twitter. We like to go back and forth a bit. He's a credible scout. Is this just reverting back to the mean?
Yeah, Kieran's comment, we're reverting back to the mean, it seems. Still working hard, still organized, but just lack quality in the final third. We still go long as the first option, but when that press/chaos doesn't work, then there isn't much else to turn to. I don't even know that it's so much regressing to the mean as this was the first of a really brutal stretch of fixtures. And we've talked about it for weeks and weeks that we got a really favorable run of fixtures that coincided very nicely with David Moyes' arrival. Now we're in the not so fun part, and it might not be a very fun few weeks because we're playing some decent teams. This being probably by far the best of those teams. So if this is the worst performance we put up for the remainder of April, I'm not too upset about that, to be honest, given the state of the squad.
I mean, Ryan makes a good point too, right? You talk about kind of the rust. I don't think we had too many guys really on international break. And you talk about just like, Iliman Njai, right? He's kind of coming back to form. I think Jesper was a big miss in terms of just the overall pace today.
Absolutely.
Right? It's just, you put him instead of Jack, right? It's just, I think it's we might not change the story, but like, it's just, it's just, that was my best impression, Ryan. Sorry if I let you down there. Yeah, it's just...
You're putting in the hard yards.
Was that your impression of Ryan doing a Sean Dyche impression, or were you going straight for Sean Dyche there?
I don't know what I was doing, frankly, and
just go with it.
Like this match, I think we were just existing. But yeah, I think we were missing some, like a Jesper. I think Njai at this point, he's just trying to get his minutes back, right? Like, and that's totally fine with me. Like, I had no issue with that. It's just the biggest win to me today was no one getting hurt. Right?
Yeah,
that's the biggest
win. And I think also something we're forgetting about is, let's look at this lineup for a second. Beto is a good backup center forward in the Premier League, and I think, and he played well, but like Jack Harrison, and we'll talk about him in a second. Dukes, I think his better days are well behind him. Ghana is still unbelievable and needs to sign the contract. James Garner's in there. James Garner is fine. He's not a world beat or anything. Mykolenko coming off injury is played pretty well, but he's not some threat to go forward. Charlie is a good player, but he's still kind of young, and he's comfortable playing off the left and was actually somewhat of a threat. But you just start to wonder, if you start mixing in some really top players here, it could be pretty interesting. It really could be. All right. After the match, the controversy was the not red card on Tark, which I think we beat into the ground. But I think it's worth revisiting the offside in terms of Everton's perspective. So Moyes very clearly thought it was a no-brainer offside, which I think is really, really interesting. So, the quote is, it's clear offside, a very easy decision to give. And he mentioned he thought it was a flat-out mistake by the referees. And then he meant to say some comment like he's not really surprised because it was at Anfield. I thought what JB said was much more interesting. He's kind of explaining, like, what do you want Tarkowski to do there? There's nothing to do about it now, but, like, what's he meant to do? Just leave the ball? And okay, but maybe that's a learning. Maybe they need to do that and adjust accordingly. I don't think you want to do that. Maybe it's just a little bit bad luck. It's kind of like if you're going to enforce the handball rule, people get offended by people putting their arms behind their back. But you see it in Europe a lot more. You don't see it in England very much. And players can adjust, but again, why don't we make this very clear what it means? You know what I mean? And maybe the language is more clear than I think, but I don't know. I think JB makes a really good point, and clearly Tarkowski was affected by it or not. But so what's the message here? That Tark, you can't do that anymore. Just let the ball go through. Maybe it is. Maybe his lack of awareness is what the problem is here, but it just doesn't feel right to me, I guess. And I think they have a point. They're very confident about it, too.
I guess my final thought on it is it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I think Tark can make a better play on the ball than he does. I don't think like half clearing it, deflecting off of a player and going right back to Liverpool is the only possible outcome he could have made when going to play the ball. So it sucks. Unfortunate things happen to Everton in particular all the freaking time. But I don't think by the rules we can have a debate all day long about do they need to change the rules and how would they change them? Maybe we'll have that debate at some point. But as the rules written, I think it's pretty clear that he doesn't try to involve himself in the play. He stands flat-footed. Sucks, but them's the breaks. I do want to try to talk about some good performances, though, because I think there were a handful of them, and we've alluded to some of them. Ryan, I'll let you pick first, even though I technically picked first in the off-air order of operations, but I like your pick and was tempted to go with him as well.
Well, sometimes I'm just faster. What can I say, man? You snooze, you lose. I went with Beto. I know he missed the goal, I guess, at the inside of the post. Whatever. But it's at times it just felt like he was so isolated. He was really the only one that was making happen. And it would have been really interesting to see him have a little better service today because he's a little bit of a chaos man, but you could tell, man, there's some center backs that want nothing to do with this guy. And it's all heart sometimes for him. And his one finish that he scored that, it's disallowed, but he doesn't know that at the time was a lovely finish. He did very well with it. And, at times he shows a really good touch, actually, mixed in with some clumsiness. I hated the yellow. I think it hurt his game a little bit. But look, he pressured. He won 7 duels. He fouled 3 times too, because that's how he is. But, there weren't a lot of standout performances, and I think other than maybe a couple on defense, and I just felt like he deserved a little bit credit, because people are going to give you the whole has to score nonsense a little bit, and sometimes they don't score, and this one, you can't say he piked it over and put it into Stanley Park. I mean, I don't know. I think what was really interesting about it is he didn't do his typical finish so far this year. He kind of cut across the body, and I think he got unlucky. It could be a gnat's eyelash, and it could have went in,
Yeah, and for mine, I decided to go with Tarkowski. One tackle that gave Sky Sports basically, content for the next 48 hours. 3 interceptions, 12 clearances, 3 block shots, 2 for 5 on long balls. I mean, the 12 clearances, it's just, I know we talk about in terms of just not defending well for the goal, but I think overall, I think the team actually defended pretty well today. And of course, Mykolenko, we've already highlighted just the brilliance against Salah, the annual brilliance against Salah. But yeah, I think overall the center backs did fine. Of course, it is interesting that, that you talk about the yellow card. I do wonder if that even affects the offside play, where he's just the lack of aggressiveness, is just kind of in his mind on that play. But of course, I will never really know. But James, what about yourself in terms of good performances?
Yeah, I went with who I think probably most would say is the consensus man of the match, Mykolenko. We talked about his numbers at the top, but I'll just reiterate. 4 for 4 in tackles, 8 clearances, 2 recoveries, and against Mo Salah, who was 0 for 5 in dribbles, 0 for 3 in crosses, and lost 11 duels total. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. I also think there's probably something to be said for I like the Tarkowski pick, Sean, in that I was looking at Liverpool's results at Anfield lately in the league, and they've scored multiple goals in almost all of their recent wins. And so to hold them to just one, okay, maybe a reach. We still lost, but it's still an overall halfway decent defensive performance.
It's hard, too, to not look at this and point out some pretty bad performances, too. I mean, some of the abuse is a little bit extreme, but, man, people were all over Jack Harrison today. Do we think this is a little over the top? I mean, I saw some people after Beto, but I just kind of like that's just being silly. I mean, things were coming off for Jack today, but the one ball he played into Beto where Beto pulled up his run, that's just getting signals crossed. I mean, some of the people out there, look, I get it. They're on social media and they need to bark at the moon or scream at the void or whatever they need to do to prevent themselves in whatever miserable situation or condition they're in, and my heart goes out to them. But I don't know. I mean, although I respect Garrett's opinions a lot, and he was pretty direct on this one too.
Yeah, Garrett Post at Parrot Ghost said, excited to hopefully see the back of Jack Harrison this summer, which I think is measured enough to say that that's fair. Jack today, 4 for 9 in passes, the 1 key pass, 0 for 2 in dribbles, 1 for 3 in crosses, 4 clearances, 3 recoveries, dribbled past 3 times, 0 for 6 in ground duels. The moment that stands out is the one, Ryan, you alluded to the end of that play where he intercepted it and actually did extremely well to dribble forward with pace, looked, dare I say, reasonably quick in doing so, and then gets into the final third and just doesn't have that sort of connection with Beto up front and plays it kind of in the middle of the 18. Only thing I'll say in defense of Jack, I don't expect us to go in for any kind of permanent move for him, but he was playing off the right again today, and that has not been a recipe for success for Jack at all this season. Every good game he's had has been off the left.
I feel for Jack, man. I think, as somebody that I think is more positive on him than most, he's had a pretty decent run of games. I think this was just a tough matchup for him. I mean, he's not, to your point, Ryan, there were a couple of bad performances. I think, unfortunately, he kind of sticks out when you think of, you look at Charlie and you look at Beto, and he's just limited. I think that's, and it's just his limits really got shown today, right? And so, for me to kind of get up in arms about him and this performance, he wasn't good today. I'm not going to say he was, but it's also, too, I didn't expect, him to light the world on fire either. And I think missing Jesper really hurt us today, and just the idea that he had to play more than he should have.
I hope people look back at us, though, and some of these guys, and at least give them credit for grinding it out. This is
100%.
It's not been an easy situation for us. But, I mean, even if you look at the table, we've got 34 points here, man. I mean, Ipswich won today, but still they're 20. We're pretty much safe. So, I mean, it's unbelievable if you think about it. So, and he deserves some credit because I think his performances have at least improved under Moyes. Yeah, James?
I thought of one other thing I'll say in defense of Jack Harrison, and that is Luis Diaz was really kind of giving Jake a hard time, and Jack had to do a lot of tracking back on that right-hand side to help defend. As did Charlie on the left to help Mykolenko. I think both of them did a really good job defensively today, but I think that limits some of what Jack can do going forward. And he's also, guys, he's trying out the man bun again, so maybe there's some acclimatization going on there.
I can't even believe you just brought that up. I will say this. I mean, I think the biggest problem is, too, when you don't have guys that can run with the ball with pace, which we didn't have today.
No.
You could tell, I mean, they could set their midfield at a certain line and really make it difficult for us. And I think that's what you saw a little bit in the second half and just kind of snuffed it out, forced everything to go long to Beto. And the second Decore ran out of steam and ran out of quality, to be perfectly honest. You saw it fall apart. I was hoping when they kept him in, they would press higher. And that's probably what would happen. Decore's another one, too. People are going to bag on him, say how bad he is and he can't pass and all this stuff. But, he's just getting old, long in the tooth, man. That's all it is. I mean, this guy was a pretty good player for a while. He was always a little bit playing fast at the expense of precise, and that's okay. But, I mean, this guy was one of the best box-to-box midfielders in the league for a while. So I wish people would tread a little bit more lightly. He's had some massive moments for us. I hope people remember him that way. I would be surprised if he stuck around. Obviously, he would do it in a more limited role. I think the only problem is, too, like you kind of look at us going forward to take a look forward, as we like to do. The schedule's pretty rough over the next 4.
Home at Arsenal, away to Forest. They're flying. Smashed Man U the other day. City, of course, maybe the most winnable of all those fixtures, although they're starting to get back on track. And then at Chelsea, Stamford Bridge. It's going to be a long April, guys. It's only the 2nd at time of recording, and we've got our work cut out for us the rest of the month.
It gets pretty light after that, though, thankfully.
Well, I'll make one point about Arsenal at home, and this is hopefully to make Wombat Combat feel a little better because he's going to be in attendance. They got Champions League on Tuesday, right? And I think, in terms of the league, I think it's pretty wrapped up for Liverpool, right? So unless they truly are just valuing second, which I think they also have in the bag, you could see a rotated lineup on Saturday, and I think also too, and James and I were talking about this before the pod, we play Arsenal pretty well, right? So I'm not trying to say that we're gonna smash them, but I also think too we actually for the most part play up to our competition. We did under Deitch, and I think we'll do it under Moyes. So I would not be surprised to get a few points this month. And I think we'll actually get a point at least on Saturday.
I mean, I think if you sit behind the ball a little bit at Goodison, we'll see who else some of us can maybe get a little bit healthy. They still may struggle to break us down. And the bottom line is they don't have that number 9 that they've needed for years. They're not willing to put in attacking players at wing back. They have some guys that are out. I think they're very much relying on Odegaard to create, and he sits in that right half space constantly. There's no reason why you can't swing someone over there. I mean, Ghana would be fun to sit there and just kick him all match. I mean, what is Michael Marino going to play up top for them and score? Knock on wood. Of course, he probably will, knowing that I just said that. I think the problem with them is they just keep you in so badly with those 2 center backs. They're so good. So I wouldn't expect us to create a whole lot. But again, Beto was taken off today, man. He should still have a little bit of energy, and he could be a pain in the took us to virtually anyone. So, fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. I mean, as long as we hang with these guys, a point here, a point there, we'll get safe in a couple matches and all will be well.
Yes, indeed. Could not agree more. We will, of course, be with you following the match versus Arsenal on Saturday. Early wake up for U.S. Toffees, 7:30 Eastern Time, 4:30 a.m. to those on the West Coast. God bless. But thanks for everyone for tuning into this episode. Appreciate the support for the Blue Frontier. As I mentioned at the top, go back and listen to the last couple episodes, something a little bit different. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. Follow us on socials, reach out, engage with us. Also, just over a week until Toffee Fest in San Diego. Sean and I very much looking forward to making the trip out there. That is coming up fast, so if you are still on the fence about going, it's not too late. Would love to have you join. Would love to see you out there. Otherwise, we'll be with you Saturday. Until then, up the Toffees.